Because I believe that what we eat, or more specifically, what we're supposed to eat, is more than just a meal. Now, we have relegated it to just something that fills our belly, right? But I want us to know today that it really is more than a meal that we are consuming. In fact, from the very beginning, it was supposed to be more than a meal. Now, I said, and I quoted this the other day, I want to do it once again. As the technology works with me, I'm right here with it, right here. This is a Chinese proverb. What I hear, I what? I forget. But what I see, I remember. So what I'd like to do is to help you to see what I see. And when I tell you that we're going to examine food from a different perspective, probably a different perspective than you ever have before. And it is my hope that as you consider it from this perspective, then the changes that you make, lifestyle changes, will be that much easier when you consider what I'm talking about. Now, nutrition comes in a few forms. I have a question for you. Can I start out with a couple of questions? Just to kind of prime the pump, to get you going, get your mind thinking, get it going. Yeah. Okay. So, what comprises food? What makes up food? We understand that when we are eating food, it has to have several components to it. Do you know what those are? It should have, what did I talk about last night that was really, really important? Fiber. Fiber is something that is considered under the category of macronutrients. Macro. And anything that's macro, you need them in a large supply. Yes, you understand that? So you have fiber that comes under that category. You have, anything else? What else comes under? Proteins would come under that category. And we know that we need tons of protein, right? Oh, what a good class. They've been paying attention, Scott. I thought for sure. I said, how can I trip them up right from the beginning? And you all didn't fall for it. I got to keep trying. So you got fiber, you got protein, you got what else? Carbohydrates, yeah? Would fats go in that category? Yes, absolutely. It's in that category as well. Now, there are also micronutrients, right? And micro indicates that we need less of them, right? By the way, you have water in front of you. Did you know that water is a macronutrient? It's a macronutrient because you need it in large supplies, right? Yes. Way to grab your water and just test out my theory. Thank you. So water is also a macronutrient. Now, and then you have vitamins and minerals, right? Minerals you need in lesser, sometimes just trace minerals, right? And you don't need a lot. You need them in small supply. Now, as we think about diet, as we think about food, right? If I took a rock, let's say I had a rock in this. I think I even have a rock. I might have a rock to really, really make the point. Forgive me for stepping over here. But I think I have a rock in my bag. Scott, you wouldn't happen to have a rock, would you? No? Not carrying a rock today? You're not packing? Okay, I have a good rock. Here's a rock right here. Let's say this rock right here, and I had, let's say, a nut of some sort. Pick a nut. What nut? Cashew. I like that. Say I had a cashew in this hand. All right? Use your imagination. And a rock in this hand. Now, if I take the rock, which is full of minerals, and I put it in the dirt and pour water on it, will it sprout another rock? Why not? It's not alive, I heard. It's not organic. It might be organic. You got to try some organic rocks. What did you say? It's not a plant, okay? It's not a seed, all right? I'm looking for something specific because what's common between the rock and the imaginary cashew over here is that they both have minerals, but the cashew has something in it that the rock doesn't have. What is that thing? Life. And vita is the Latin word for life. So for vitamins and minerals will cause the cashew to sprout when given the conditions, whereas the rock will not. This is full of minerals, but I don't recommend that you eat them. They're very, very hard on the teeth. We must understand that there are things that we must have in our food. And we now understand macronutrients and micronutrients. These things were established from the very beginning, but the body's primary fuel source is what? Is it protein? Is it fat? What is it? It's carbohydrates. Now, the keto diet person would tell you that it is fat. Yeah, that the body should be running off of fat. I'm going to skip around a little bit today. And I want to show you some of the diets that people are searching for on, say, Google. Number one search is the keto diet. Keto diet, yeah. And, you know, if you really want to splurge, you can do the bacon and butter diet, right? So these are crazy diets that assume somehow that if you actually have a diet that is high in fat, you will lose weight. Is that true? The answer is yes, you will lose weight, but you will destroy your kidneys in the process. You know? So people call me often and they say, hey, what do you think about the keto diet? And I answer, I don't think about it because it's not a diet, right? So here are all types of things that people are searching for. The keto diet, paleo diet, and I love the way that they use this marketing, paleo diet for athletes. And this is the idea that somehow the diet that was back in, caveman days. Cavemen were healthy, right? So you go back to the paleo time and, the paleo solution. It's all marketing though, right? It's all marketing. I'm going to try that over there. Yeah, let's see if that works. Upside down. Give Scott a big hand. He's been very faithful every night, helping these things to work. So all types of diets. People are putting out these ideas of diets, different diets, right? Good calories, bad calories. By the way, health and a healthy diet the objective never was to lose weight. You know that people, whenever you think of diet, what do you think of? That's how I'm going to lose some weight. But diet was something that was never, ever, ever, ever meant to, all right, you're going to lose a lot of weight. Yeah, that works much better. One click and it did it. But they had the South Beach diet. If you eat this diet, then you're going to look like everybody down in Florida, right? Then there was the Atkins diet, right? Remember that one? And Dr. Atkins had this diet. It was lots of protein, lots of steak, and things like that. Also overtaxes the kidneys, and it's pretty rough on your heart as well. And he, the originator of this idea of this diet, actually died from heart disease. Scarsdale diet. This is one that got really interesting for me. 1975, there was the Stone Age diet. Also the idea of this whole paleo thing. Going back to what they must have been doing. They must have been healthy because these cavemen, they were able to write things on walls. Now, this is not a joke. 1964, the very year I was born, they came up with a diet, the drinking man's diet. This is not a joke. It was a book. The Drinking Man's Diet. How to lose weight with a minimum of willpower. That's what you want. No willpower, but as long as I get to lose some weight, right? All right. I did a plant-based summit. Some of you may have joined me there in New York when I did this plant-based summit, and it was a beautiful thing. We did about 3 years in a row of this plant-based summit, and people came from all over. And one of the things that was amazing to me was that it sort of attracted a lot of Jewish people. A lot of people from the Jewish community came to this plant-based summit. And they were so interested in a plant-based diet. And what they asked me to speak on was, what was the origin of a plant-based diet? So I had to deal with the origin. I mean, they had T. Colin Campbell there. They had Dr. Hannah Kaliova from the Responsible Commissioner for Responsible Physicians. They had all these heavy hitters there. And there I was talking about the origin. And here was the thing that brought shockwaves to those in attendance. That with all the popularity of a plant-based diet, the plant-based diet's origin is found not in a restaurant or in a cookbook. It actually comes from the Bible. That was the origin. And here were these wonderful Jewish people, and they went, what? They couldn't believe it. And I shared with them how, yes, the original diet is found in Genesis 1:29. How many of you didn't know that? Ah, that blesses my heart. I'm only talking to you two for the rest of the time. I'm just kidding about that. But it is very good to see that you guys, hold on a second. Oh, come on, technology, work with me. So it's good to see that a few people here are not aware of these facts. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take you through this scenario of this idea of why a plant-based diet and where it is found originally. It's found in Genesis 1:29, and God said, behold, I have given you, I'm just going right from the Bible. God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. It says that in the King James, but it really means food. Now, can we just break this down? Because there's something in it, and if you see it, because if you see it, you'll remember it. Remember that? If you hear it, you'll do what? You might forget. But if you see it, then you'll remember. So I want you to see it and actually be able to remember, because there's more here than meets the eye. Okay? Now, let's break it down. So apparently God said, behold, I have given you. Now, that's just a verse that seems innocuous, seems pretty benign, and you just skip right over it. You wouldn't even waste time. You would keep going, and you would figure out, what is it that he gave? But I don't do that. I actually stop, and I'm one of those people, I'm very analytical, and I look at every word. So I came up with several things from this one verse, right? And it's going to be helpful for you as you determine how you're going to proceed in terms of your diet from this point forward, right? And what I found is that in this one verse, there are several things. One, this particular diet was given for health. That was obvious. And all the science proves that, and I'm going to show that to you as well. with the science, right? This diet was also given for or given out of love. Right, everybody cool with that? You like love? Yeah. Oh, you guys, help this crowd. They're like, what else you got? You gotta love love, come on. Okay, so it's given for love, and if it's given for love, then it's also given for, because love is the thing that binds something together, right? And that is a relationship. So the diet was also given for relationship. Are you with me so far? Now, let's start with love. So it says, behold, I have given you. Now, that word right there, given, give. If I give you something, it's a gift, right? Now, I could give you a gift and not like you, right? But in God's economy, it doesn't work that way. When he gives it from a certain place. What do you think is the most popular text of Scripture in the Bible? John 3:16. And in John 3:16 it says, for God so loved, what? Everybody knows it. That he did what? He gave. He gave. So if God gives out of love, because it says he loved and therefore he gave. So when he gives out of love. So the diet, first of all, was given out of love. So if it was given out of love, and if love is the binding thing that holds a relationship together, then probably there was a desire for a relationship. So I'm submitting to you this afternoon that the diet that was given, first and foremost, was because God loves you. And secondly, he gave it because he wants a relationship. How long does he live, by the way? Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's never too late to join us. We're glad you're here. Does God live for a few years? How long does he live? For a long time, right? So therefore, if he lives forever, then if he said, by the way, before God made a man, he made a menu. Did you know that? Before he made man, he designed his menu first. That's in Genesis 1:29. So he made man after he made a menu. And what did he put on the menu? Well, you see it right here. What was it? I've given you every air-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every that does what? It also yields seed, right? So we find in this one verse that not only do we see that God loves, but he also is giving a very specific diet. Now, I mentioned the whole idea. Hello, Tom. Hello. Didn't mean to, I'm sorry. Here's the idea that I want you to follow. Not only did God give something on this menu out of love, but he also gave it for health. He gave it for health. Now, what's a seed? What's a seed? It's life, isn't it? Right? Because we just talked about if you put it in the ground, more life will spring up. Yeah? And you'll get more life from it. It will actually produce the same kind of life that's in it. Right? But you'll see there that he mentions every herb bearing seed. So seeds are, let's make sure that we're clear on what seeds are. What are seeds? You know, people always tease me. They say, wow, man, you talk a lot about seeds. You must be eat like a bird. And I'm like, yeah, I do. They can fly, right? Can you do that? Right? They can. Well, most of them can. So what are seeds? It's not just seeds itself. It's more of something that's more comprehensive. And what it also comprehends are nuts are seeds. Because seeds are anything that will reproduce after its own kind, right? So nuts are seeds. That's your almonds, that's your walnuts, that's your Brazil nuts, and so forth, right? But not only that, beans are seeds. Will beans sprout if you put them in water? Absolutely. So they're also a seed. And hold on to your hats. Seeds are seeds, right? But grains are seeds too. So the diet in the beginning was all about, if you could just narrow it down to one word, it was all about life. As you said, it's all about life. So what was the thing that was intended for you from the beginning? Life. Life and not death. So the research shows that when you eat, you ready for this? You're not ready for this. You are not ready for what I'm about to show you. You're not ready. Are you really ready? All right, let me show you what I'm talking about. You're not going to believe this research. It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. And when we look at seeds, but that's not all we're going to look at. We're going to look at also the thing that came second. So I have given you nuts and seeds. Well, might we find some research that backs up my claim that the original diet was given out of love for a relationship, and God who lives forever, he wanted us to live how long? Forever, right? So, and that we can't live forever, at least we can live longer. Notice what the research says. Eating one handful of nuts 5 or more days a week will extend your lifespan by, that's the science. So eating nuts and seeds daily actually extends your life. Carmelo, where are you?
He went to pick someone up.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I was going to just say something about that red meat that he was talking about. Red meat actually shortens your life by 7 to 12 years. That's why it wasn't on the menu in the beginning, because it actually has things in it that actually don't work with your body chemistry. It breaks down the body in ways that lead to lifestyle issues, including chronic diseases. So it was in place, and it's not so much a situation where, and by the way, anybody who actually eats meat, this is not a hit or any way, discouraging you or judging you or condemning you. We're all in different places, right? But what I always do, I come to town, and my job, my assignment is to take you from sickness to health. And the science shows that certain foods will make you sick, and other foods will make you well. So I'm going to share with you what makes you well and what makes you sick, and then you'll decide. Is that all right? Make sense? Is that fair? That's fair. I think that's fair. But I'm showing you here, make sure you get your nuts and seeds in the morning, right? How much should you eat? How much should you eat? Well, it says a handful. That's a quarter cup, basically. Now, I have to demonstrate because some people get really, really tricky. And they say a handful, and they have they pile a whole thing of nuts on their hands. That's a handful. You don't do that. That's not good. Nuts are good. It's a good fat, but it's a fat nonetheless. So here's the scenario for eating the right amount of nuts. Open your hand, put in the nuts, all nuts, put them in your hand, close your fist. I'm not done yet. Upside down. Anything that falls out, you don't eat. All right? That's how you want to eat your nuts and seeds. But nonetheless, the research shows us, according to this 2001 study, that when you eat nuts and seeds, a handful every day, you actually extend your lifespan. Now, that sounds like love. Do you hear it? Do you see it? I'm giving you the research, right? Now, I want to be very clear with you. My intention is not to just come here and give you a Bible study. That's not what I'm doing. My mind goes back to, I reflect back to what I was asked to do when I did this plant-based summit, and everybody wanted to know what was the origin. And I had to go back, and I had to study this. And I had to see, well, what was the origin? Okay, I see it. This was thousands of years ago. But why? I never just take the answer. That, okay, it started here, but my question was why. So what I'm sharing with you is the why. The why. And the first thing that we see is it's good for your health, isn't it? It extends your life, doesn't it? Whereas you take any other source of protein, nuts are a good source of protein, take any other source from an animal, and it actually shortens your life. Right? Makes sense. Here's some more science. People who eat nuts and seeds tend to not only live longer, but also suffer fewer deaths from cancer, heart disease, and respiratory disease. The three big ones, first three, right? So by eating nuts and seeds, and again, we want to be very clear, beans are good for your heart. We know that, right? Excellent for your heart. Now, you can just kind of go to different types of nuts and seeds, and you'll find that they're good for different things. That's what's so amazing to me. Can I give you a few examples? Walnuts are like a king of nuts kind of a nut. And what's so beautiful about walnuts is that it's like this God who loved and gave, he said, you know what? I better design the shape and look of the nut for what it's good for. Because they're just going to, yes, because they'll just skip right over it. But walnuts actually look like two halves of your brain, and they're actually full of omega-3s. And guess what? They actually are good for slowing brain aging. I'm not done yet. Brazil nuts, I mentioned these. Brazil nuts actually are better than statin drugs. Statin drugs are what you use to lower your cholesterol. Not one statin drug will bring down your cholesterol as fast as Brazil nuts will do. I do them every single day. And listen to me, friends. I never have to worry about high cholesterol. I have them every single day. We've been waiting for you. We just started. We got a front row seat for you. Hey, how about pumpkin seeds? Anybody like pumpkin seeds? Yeah. You used to just pop those all day long, right? You can eat a little more than, by the way, that is a complete and very potent protein. You won't find another protein better than that, even in a meat source. Guess what? For men, especially over 40 years of age, starting to have enlarged prostate and prostate issues, pumpkin seeds full of zinc are good for your prostate health. Every day, handful of pumpkin seeds. Well, as we eat different things, we might pick up some sort of a bug or worm along the way, some kind of a parasite. It's just natural. It happens. Well, guess what? Pumpkin seeds paralyze parasites. There's some alliteration for you. Pumpkin seeds paralyze parasites. P, alliteration? It's lost on you guys. What it does is it paralyzes the whatever that parasite that might be in your gut, that might be growing and causing you harm, paralyze it. It'll be like rendered inoperable or whatever, and it will actually flush out the system. Pumpkin seeds. Can I give you one more?
Yes, please.
Seeds are awesome. I don't like to overdo it.
Yes.
I don't like to overdo it, but I get carried away with the seeds. But I'm going to kind of give you some object lessons. Is that all right? Yes. Okay. I'm going to end with an object lesson, but I'm going to start with this one because I'm kind of giving it to you from a more spiritual place, right? And we find that seeds are not just seeds, and it makes sense now when you go back and you see that I have given you every herb that yields seed. There was a reason for it, because it is a perfect picture and illustration of what takes place in this world of the kind of hardship that we have as a result of the fall of man. Well, when you eat seeds, you'll find that inside of a seed, most seeds, especially apple seeds and things like that, you can't eat a lot of apple seeds, right? Because you'll find that they have what in them? Arsenic, yeah. Which is a cousin to, that's a toxin, that's a poison. But you'd have to eat a lot of seeds to actually poison yourself from them, right? But it's a cousin to something called amygdalin. Amygdalin is also found in seeds. Now, amygdalin, when you actually eat a seed, that amygdalin, the bioactive, actually goes through your system. It binds itself to toxins, heavy metals, and then it pulls them and takes them out of your body. So you begin to see why he said, eat seeds, right? You didn't catch it. You didn't catch it. No, you didn't. You didn't catch it. You didn't catch it. Let me give it to you again. So when you eat like, say, an apple, you accidentally eat a couple of those seeds, or you eat like the average strawberry, it says fruits and seeds, right? I imagine that many of the fruits from the beginning, they looked like things like kiwi or strawberries. The average strawberry, guess how many seeds the average strawberry has on it? 60? 100? The average strawberry has 200 seeds on it. Do you ever worry about eating those seeds? No. You just eat them, right? Now, what you didn't know is while you're eating them, they're going in and they're doing something for you. They're removing something that might be detrimental to your health. It's binding to things that are toxic in your body that we just get naturally from breathing, from touching, and placing our hands on our face, and these things make it into our orifices, and they end up in our bodies. So there is something that has been designed to grab them and pull them and take them out. Now, I just got to say this because, when I give a health talk, and I've been talking 4 days just about health, I'm really a minister by trade, and I have to tell you that when we understand the gospel message, God comes into this world, grabs sin like a toxin, and takes it out of the world. Did you catch that? I'm not thumping you with it, but I'm just letting you know that these things are more than just a meal. Did you see that? You all look confused. Did you see it? I got more for you. It'll make it clear. All right. So we see that these nuts and seeds do wonderful things. Good for brain health with those omega-3s. Almonds, great for your immune system. Brazil nuts, high in selenium and good for bringing down your cholesterol, right? So we see that these things are great. Here's that study. For Brazil nuts, you shouldn't eat any more than 3 or 4 per day. 3 or 4 per day. That's all you need. Any more can give you selenium toxicity, right? Because you only need them in trace amounts. But 4 Brazil nuts lowers LDL, that's the bad cholesterol, lowers LDL cholesterol levels up to 20 points in just 9 hours after eating a single serving. Between 1 and 8 nuts, that's what they did in the study. Numbers, Tom, the numbers stayed down even for 1 month afterwards. Now let me see your statin drug do that. Now there is a great book written by Dr. William Lee. Dr. William Lee wrote a book called Eat to Beat Disease. I was really curious about this book. I wanted to know, what is he dealing with in this book? And he was breaking down how there are certain foods that you can eat that will help you to beat disease. And I searched the book over, and I said, how much of it, where can I find the breast of chicken? Couldn't find it. Where's the steak to help you beat disease? Not there. Where was the fish? Well, there was some fish. But primarily, he pointed out 5 things that I need to point out to you. And those 5 things are, these are things to help you to fight and beat disease. And we understand today we need to be fighting, right? You all understand that, right? You can't just lay down and just be like, all right, I'll just, do whatever and hope for the best. That doesn't work. You have to be intentional, right? So Dr. William Lee, he's someone who has really been on the front lines of something called angiogenesis. Angiogenesis. Angiogenesis is, not to get all sciencey, but just to break it down a little bit for you, angiogenesis is this thing that takes place in your body naturally. You see the word Genesis, beginning, right? So it's the beginning of how the body will develop blood vessels or vascular system to feed the rest of your organs. That's taking place in your body right now. When you eat this food, it's either feeding you health or it's feeding you disease, right? Or, put another way, what you eat can actually grow disease in your body, right? So he looked at this idea of angiogenesis where, say, for example, you have your pancreas. It's got blood vessels, and the way that it's fed is through those blood vessels. You eat some food, breaks it down into nutrients, smaller particles, and then it feeds the organ. That's what happens. So you have to ask yourself, what are you feeding yourself? What are you feeding your organs? That's why people say you are what you eat. Well, anti-angiogenic food are foods that actually stop that process. It's a perfect process. It's the law of the body. It does what it does whether you want it to or not. However, when you have a fibroid tumor growing, when you have a malignant tumor growing in the body, when you have a cyst that's growing in the body, anything that's growing in the body, the law of the body says, feed it. So one of the things that will feed it is protein from a meat source. Another thing that will feed it is sugar, especially refined sugar and processed refined flours and things like that. It just feeds it. It's just a natural thing. Our bodies run from carbohydrates, and so if you're getting extra protein and glucose and all this, you're going to be feeding something that you don't want to grow. Does that make sense? So he started looking at this science of anti-angiogenic drugs. But then you can watch his YouTube presentation, or you can read his book. It's a great book. But here's what he discovered. He discovered, wow, you can come up with these different drugs that are derived, obviously, from plants, nuts, and seeds, right? Or you can just eat the plants, the nuts, and the seeds. Namely, and especially, are you ready for this? No, you're not. Collard greens. Anybody like collard greens? You like collard greens? Wow, hands went up. You guys really like collard greens. Collard greens are anti-angiogenic. Let me just break that down. So, if you've got some sort of a fibroid tumor or some other type of tumor that's growing in your body, and the blood vessels are feeding it, causing it to go from something that was the size of a little small pea to the size, when they look at it, they say, wow, it's the size of a golf ball or a tennis ball, or the size, you always hear this one, it's the size of a grapefruit. How did it grow? It was growing because you kept feeding it. However, when you actually are eating collard greens, it is anti-angiogenic, and guess what it does? It actually starves the tumor by cutting off the blood supply to it. Do you hear love in that? Do you see love in it? Did you catch that? So in other words, you've got a blood vessel going to it. It was feeding it all along. It was growing, but then you started eating collard greens, and you started eating kale, and you started eating all these green leafy vegetables, and then lo and behold, the blood vessels just dried up and died, but not the ones that went to the organs that should be growing and living. Did you all get that? Now, what science is doing is they're able to distinguish, here's what they try to do. This thing will only affect this in your body. This will affect that in your body. Here's what you need to know. They're just copying what already happens naturally in the plant-based world as it pertains to getting rid of and fighting diseases by just using the things that cut off the supply to disease. You see it? I hope you see it. But here are a couple other things. You all let me know when the food is all warmed up and ready to go. Because I know this crew. They've been sampling all week long. And no matter how anti-angiogenic this presentation is, they're going to be like, I smell something coming from there, and I want to taste it. So let me know when we're close to the food being warmed up, and then I will modify things accordingly. I had promised last night that I would take some questions, right? Yeah. You got some questions? Good. All right, here's some other things. Now, all these 5 things these 5 defense systems for your health that I found in this book that you should know and understand, it's really, really important for us to really break them down. I won't do it as much as I did with angiogenesis, but regeneration, do you know what that is? You know, it's when the body actually can regenerate. You get a scratch, a scar, and then the body begins to do what? It begins to heal. You get a scab, and then before you know it, it's gone. And that happens immediately from the blood as it begins to rush to that area. I said the blood rushes to that area and begins the process of healing. I hope you just heard what I said. The blood begins to rush to that area and begins to heal that area. And what you find, are you ready for this? What you have that actually accomplishes that is something called stem cells. Anybody hear about all this research on stem cells? See, stem cells are cells, they basically are cells that haven't determined what they are yet. But they become whatever you need. You scratch your arm, stem cells determine, oh, he needs some skin cells. Do something to your eye, the stem cells become what you need in terms of cells for your eye, which are very different from your skin. You understand this? Break a bone, you need to heal that bone, and guess what? Stem cells determine, oh, we will become bone cells. So they become whatever you need. There are certain foods that regenerate stem cells. You already guessed it, didn't you? You won't find it in the meat department. You know, it was a funny story. There's a statement that's in the scriptures that says, wide is the way that leads to destruction, but narrow is the path that leads to life, like we're talking about. And a little girl was with her mom, and she picked up on this thing, and I thought it was so brilliant. She looked inside the grocery store, and she saw all these owls, things in boxes, things in bags, meats and things like that. And then she looked over at just the produce owl. She said, oh, wow, Mom, look at how all the owls lead to destruction. But the produce owl is just one narrow path to life. There are foods that actually boost your immune system, like almonds, like I talked about. There's so many other types of foods. The microbiome I talked about last night, that's your good gut bacteria that actually will produce things to keep your inflammation down. And DNA protection. There are foods that actually protect your DNA every single day. All of them are found in a plant-based diet. All right? Does that make sense so far? He gave some examples of the foods. You can take pictures of this if you want to. Take pictures of that. Key foods affecting regeneration stem cell boosting. Look at that. I just went through the list. It's like, wow, what are they? You can just take a picture and you can start adding these into your diet. Take a picture. So that's for stem cell boosting. Get those blackberries. Get those carrots. And I always say, get the purple ones, right? Cranberries, right? That EVOO under the olive oil is the extra virgin olive oil. But it's all things that are derived from plants. Everybody good? Key foods affecting the microbiome. Prebiotic. Do you all know the difference between antibiotic, probiotic, and prebiotic? You're going to know today. Antibiotics are what basically, anybody here on antibiotics right now? No one? That's really, really good. Oh, I have another question. Follow-up question. Anybody, this is not to discourage you, condemn you, or even judge you. But is there anyone who has any kind of meat product in your diet? Beef, chicken? Beef, chicken. A few people, a few. Okay, so you are on antibiotics because the majority of antibiotics actually go to livestock. So you are receiving it in a secondary kind of way. You need to know that. So, and the scientists are very concerned because when we are constantly taking in antibiotics, when you actually need an antibiotic, it may not work for you, and they believe the superbug theory will take place where we will actually be subjected to superbugs. Okay, so if you have something and you have to take an antibiotic, then you got to do it, right? So that's what that's what antibiotics are. And then you got prebiotics, and a lot of people doing kombucha, and you can do the different types of fermented things. Yeah, you'll find that to be probiotic. Probiotics, you see it probiotic, so it's pro-life, right? Antibiotic is anti-life. It's going to kill stuff, right? So probiotic is what you need when you have some gut issues and you've got an overgrowth of different type of bad bacteria. You need a probiotic, right? Or if you've taken some type of antibiotic already, you got to replace that natural flora, right? But prebiotic is the original deal. Do you know what prebiotics are? They're up there. It's just fiber, one of your macronutrients. So you're naturally getting prebiotics by just eating a plant-based diet. Right? Make sense? All right, good. So you see the things there. Here are other things that are prebiotic. And you want to be doing prebiotics all the time. All right, now, I smell string beans. How are you guys doing? You want to give me like a timing? Give me some. Who's got the kitchen going? Let me know. Send me a sign. Got one? Sure, no worries. 15 minutes? I can do a lot with 15 minutes. Yeah, okay. 15, 20. Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to save some time for questions, though. All right, you got it? Oh, well, Gary, you're still taking it. There you go. All these things you'll find in that book. I really recommend that book. A couple books that I've referred to in these lectures. I talked about Dr. Michael Greger, How Not to Die. I talked about the book When to Eat, Eating with the Circadian Rhythm. And this book, How to Eat to Beat Disease. Now, I got a question for you guys as I sort of narrow this into focus a little bit. Here's a question for you. What was in the original diet? Who was paying attention? What was in it? Help me out. Herbs, fruit, nuts, seeds. Okay. Everything you said was right, except most of what you said. Again, here's that verse again, but it's so powerful because notice, you looked at this and you said, I have given you every herb, and you said that was the food. You thought that, didn't you? Right? But it wasn't so much the noun of the thing, I've given you every herb, it's the verb of the thing. What do I mean by that? I've given you every herb that does something. It yields something, right? I got it. It's good. Little warning next time that it's nothing behind it. Not your fault, Scott. It's not your fault, Scott. You gave me a clicker. I should have pointed to it, right? Use your clicker. I went old school. This right here. Okay, so I think you got it, D. You said it yields something, right? So it's not the noun of the thing, it's the verb of the thing. It does something. It yields what? Seeds. So the thing that it yields is the food, right? So I'm pointing it out to you because when you get down here, you see the same thing. It says, in every tree, should you eat the tree? No. Whose fruit yields something. So just by going from what was established, it does something. And the fruit, because we know that there were lots of fruit trees, but the fruit was yielding something, right? But the thing, while you can actually eat the fruit, we learned that the herb was not on the original menu. Did you know that? The herb came later in Genesis 3:18. It says, thorns and thistles also, and you shall eat the herb of the field. Now that is intentional, and it means something. Let me show you what I mean. It says, I have given you greens, collards, kale, right? Those things. What was that? Somebody added something to that? Brussels sprouts, bok choy, right? All these things, Swiss chard, callaloo if you're from the Caribbean, yeah? You always know the Caribbeans, they just start laughing and get so gleeful. Ah, yes, he mentioned my leaf. Okay, so kale, let's look at kale for a second. But I'm going to show you something very, very powerful here. Kale is a great source of calcium and magnesium, nutrient dense, high in vitamin A, C, and K. That's good for your immune health, and it's a powerful antioxidant, quercetin. But it also contains this powerful cancer fighter called sulforaphane, right? You won't find this in your meat products, but you find it in kale. And kale also is a cousin or in the family of broccoli and Brussels sprouts and good leaf lettuce and so forth, right? Then you have collards, which we talked about. It's the healthiest vegetable because it's anti-angiogenic. I talked to you about that, right? Also good for your immune system, great source of fiber, fights cancer because of the sulforaphane. So it's anti-angiogenic, and it binds bile acid in digestive tract, lowering your cholesterol. So you want to do a 1-2 punch on your high cholesterol? What can you combine in your day's diet to fight or bring down your cholesterol? Collards and, I love this class, Scott. They pay attention, man. Everybody gets an A. All right. But is that all? Here's what is said. I may have read this in other talks, but the Global Burden of Disease study identified the typical American diet as the primary cause of Americans' death and disability. So people, as I mentioned, are digging their grave with a fucking knife, right? Inadequate intake of vegetables is our 5th leading dietary risk factor, nearly as bad as our consumption of processed meats. Now, the World Health Organization has classified your processed meats as a class A1 carcinogen. Carcinogens are associated with cancer. So what are we talking about when we say processed meats? Salami, your sliced turkey, bologna, roast beef, all that stuff you can get from Subway, right? Put this on YouTube because I'll get sued because of the Food Disparaging Act. Everybody's like, I'm never eating at Subway again. Okay, so processed meats are really bad, but also the red meats. More than 100,000 lives per year, according to this study, could be saved if people just increased their consumption of fruits and vegetables, according to the dietary guidelines, right? In this Harvard University study, they agree with this idea. Now, remember, let me make sure that you understand this, because what I'm about to show you is really important for you to embrace, okay? Embrace. Now, we have agreed that the original diet was fruits, nuts, grains, and seeds. Herbs were given to the animals, not to human beings. Before God made a man, he made a menu. Man then was told, you may eat from every tree of the garden except how many trees? Just one. Don't eat from that tree. That's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat from that tree. Only eat from the ones that I've told you to eat from. Man said, well, according to the prompting from a little crawly thing, right? They ate from the wrong tree. Once they ate from the wrong tree, then something called sin came into the world. And then the diet changed. Why do you think the diet changed? didn't so much change. Fruits, nuts, grains, and seeds were still there. Something was added. That's when the herbs were added. Because then sickness and death were going to come into our space, right? So notice, in a Harvard University study, researchers found that of all the foods associated with protection against chronic disease, greens, the ones that were added to the diet, packed the greatest punch. Science is now agreeing with the original diet. Are you all with me? Have you abandoned me? Have I confused you? Science is agreeing with the original diet, and we're now seeing that there's love in that diet. It was designed even as sin and death came into the world, there was a solution for it. Collard greens. Only people in the world then was Adam and Eve. But when Adam also partook of that fruit, God said, Adam, you're going to have to eat collard greens now. Eve, you may not like the collards. You're going to have to eat kale. But you're going to have to eat greens, because these are going to help fight disease that will invariably come. Make sense? Now, broccoli. I have given you broccoli, again, out of love. Can we just take a few moments before we take questions and look at broccoli? Now, there's something that's common about all these vegetables. Now, this was a University of Chicago, Harvard University, and the U.S. Institutes of Health study. And they looked at all the cancers, the deadly ones, and they wanted to see if they put people on broccoli, what would happen? And here are the results. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was reduced by 40%. Lung cancer by 28%. Breast cancer by 17%. Ovarian cancer by 33%. Esophageal cancer by 31%. Prostate cancer, men, almost 60% reduction of prostate cancer by just having some broccoli in your salad. That is not a number to sneeze at. When you start to go past 40%, this is something that should grab your attention. When you go beyond 50%, you better wake up and start doing something. But at 60%, this is real. Almost eliminates it. And anyway, I could say so much more. Melanoma cancer, skin cancer by 28%. So broccoli brings down or reduces all incidents of cancer. Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food, said Hippocrates. Thomas Edison said the doctor of the future will not prescribe medicine, but instead will begin to just prescribe fruits and vegetables. I can't tell whether you all are clapping because that made sense, or you're like, if we clap, he'll stop talking and then we can eat. I'm on to you guys. I'm on to you. I know what's up. I've been around. They said it will be 20 minutes, so slow your horses. Okay, so these are all cruciferous vegetables. Institute of Food Research in Norwich, UK, that's in the UK. Effects of cancer cells when exposed to the bioactive sulforaphane in cruciferous vegetables showed profound epigenetic changes in the DNA. Sulforaphane reduced by half the amount of cancerous activity in the genes in cancer. Do you understand epigenetics? Anybody understand epigenetics? One, two, a couple understand epigenetics. Let me explain, because that won't make sense to you. Epigenetics, epi, above, so it's above your DNA, or be above your genes. So in other words, your genes are not relegated to, all of your genes are not relegated to your genetics or your heredity, right? To your family history, right? It's largely lifestyle, as I mentioned, 75%. What happens to you in terms of what happens to your body is largely your choice. And epigenetics explains that perfectly. How did they come into this understanding? They really came into the understanding while examining and studying bees. Bees? Yeah, bees. What they did was they looked at, come on in, come on in. They started studying bees. And bees are pretty much, genetically they're the same, right? They're different types who do different roles, but genetically they're basically the same. And then there's the queen bee. But you don't birth a queen bee. This is so important. I hope you get this to understand epigenetics. You don't birth a queen bee. What they do is, while they are just little small larvae, when the queen bee that lives a long time, years and years and years, whereas the bees, they just only live a few months, right? They just keep producing. And that's all the queen bee does. She just keeps producing bees, right? But when that queen bee starts to get a little old, long of tooth, they start to feed a larvae royal jelly. Royal jelly. And the queen gene, which lies dormant, is activated when that larvae eats the royal jelly. Catch that? So in other words, there is a suppressed gene in every bee until you feed it a certain food, and then it awakens the queen, and then the queen gene, and it becomes a queen bee. And that's what helped them to understand epigenetics. So in other words, like in the book and the study, the China study, anybody ever heard of that? They saw that cancer, listen very carefully, cancer can be turned on and turned off like a light switch. You eat a certain food, you turn cancer on. Meat turns cancer on like a light switch. Dairy products, cheese and milk turns cancer on like a light switch. Guess what turns it off? The How to Beat Disease menu. It turns it off. Make sense? So that's what epigenetics is. It's how your genes will express themselves based on the environment or what you expose it to. Give it cancer-causing food, it turns on the light switch. Take away that food, turns it off. Make sense? Jim, I saw your hand. You can hold on just a second. You had a first question. You'll have the first one. Unless you're going to tell me you have some bees and you tried that experiment.
Okay, so is it better to eat broccoli cooked or not cooked?
That's an excellent question. What you will find is that certain foods, either way they work well. When you heat food up, you kill the enzymes. You understand this? 105 degrees, the enzymes in your food, which helps to break down the food, they are destroyed when you heat up food. So it's always good to try to be raw and cooked half and half. A lot of times we eat food, and I hope we have a salad today, otherwise I'm going to look very hypocritical. But you should always have at least 50% raw and 50% cooked. Eat always the raw first because it stimulates the digestion. You understand this? So you'll find that foods work both ways. Like tomatoes are excellent for men's prostate when it's cooked. So sauces are good and healthy for a man's prostate health. However, tomatoes are good for the heart when they are not cooked. Now, who's going to complain? Which one? If a man and a woman have a salad with raw tomatoes and have a pasta with some sauce. And everyone's taken care of. You catch that? Same thing, kale cooked is good for one thing, kale raw is good for something else. And you'll find that to be the case as you go through. In fact, it points out a lot of that in that book, How to Eat to Beat Disease. It'll tell you which ones to do which with. Now, having said that, as it pertains to broccoli, broccoli is powerful. It is powerful, 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 and you don't want to overcook it because you want to retain a lot of that. Steaming broccoli is best, and you don't have to, you just want to make it a little soft and supple because it's quite coarse. You understand, right? But either way, you're going to get the benefits of the sulforaphane. Enzymes might be depleted, but the sulforaphane will still be beneficial to you. All right, cabbage. Here is my last little bit here before I stop and take some questions. All right? Cabbage. I do the purple cabbage because, as I've said, the darker the color, the more nutrient dense it will be. But I need you to know that cabbage also is very closely linked with kale and collards and Brussels sprouts and broccoli and cauliflower. They all belong to a certain family. And you saw here, it pointed out cruciferous. What do you hear there in that word? Let me bring cruciferous. Now remember, this is my last little nutritional push and my spiritual push, because it's more than a meal. And I want you to see that today. And what you see, you will what? What you see, you will what? Remember. You'll remember. So I want you to see something that you probably never saw before. It's not that I have determined that you should see it. It's just there. You just missed it. But now that you're going to see it, it's going to prove to you that it's more. Any of these things are more than just a meal. So as we look at cabbage, also a member of the cruciferous vegetables, cruciferous, if we break down the word, here is just right from the dictionary, and it says the origin is Latin, and the crux or the cruc part of the word means what? Cross. Cross. And the fer in the cruciferae is bearing. Cross bearing. The vegetable that came into or came onto the menu, according to Genesis 3:18, was a diet that was to not only help you to fight off disease, it was also to give a picture of not only the fact that it is cross-bearing, but it is the thing that is closely linked to the cross. Think about it. Have you ever gone and took a cabbage and you began to peel its leaves? You will pour, or you will pull to the, which way am I going? That's the right, but I want to go east and west. You know what? Why am I so particular? This way. You go this way. Let's say it's the east. You go this way, and it's the west. Then you go and pull the next leaf, and it will go to the north. You pull the next leaf, and it will go to the south. And then you start the next one, and it repeats. It's constantly doing a cross. That's why they call it cruciferous, because its root word is crucify. Now, what that means is something embedded in the food from the very beginning wanted to make sure that we never, ever forgot where that food came from and the love that was in it when it was given to us. You can't get around it. It's more than just a meal.
Could you say, kill the disease with that word? Kill the disease.
If you want to say it, you can say it. It will crucify the disease. I hadn't thought about it, but maybe I will incorporate that in my next talk. Friends, I'm coming to you. Friends, I want you to know in my closing thoughts for you is that it's more than just a meal. It's about a relationship. And God gave foods because those food, he says, if you eat from this tree, you'll live forever. And the God who lives forever wants a relationship with people who don't go off and die. Think about it. How many of you are married here? Don't you want to just live with each other forever? Don't ask that question. Don't answer. But the bottom line truly is that when you decide to get married, you want it to last a long time. You don't get married to say, you know what, I hope we go a good 5 years and then you know what. You don't do that. And God didn't either. So when he made man, he gave first a diet that would allow man to live forever because he desires a relationship with you forever. And in that food, even when man could not live forever anymore, God gave a meal that would help in that regard. Sister, I am not going to skip your question. I'm going to come to it. But I want to show one other thing that I think is really, really pertinent in this study. This is the best study ever. Best study ever. Here it is, closing with this. So, this, again, just to give you the validity of what I'm talking about in terms of what God gave in the beginning out of love versus what came as a result of sin. And then meat was given as a last resort after there was no vegetation. But look at this. Yeah. Okay, look at this. So, 10 generations. Does anyone know how long a generation is? It's 40 years. 40 years. 40 years. Write that down. Keep it in your mind. 40 years. So when you look at 10 generations before the flood, I believe that the flood was real. I don't believe it was imaginary. But let's just say you don't. That's fine. We're just going to go on the science. All right? According to what's written, you have the largest longitudinal study in the history of the world that's found right in the pages of Genesis. Are you ready for this? 10 generations before the flood, according to this, Adam lived 930 years. Again, you find this to be fairy tale, that's your business. Fine. I believe that it happened, but even if it didn't, this is what it's teaching. Notice the lesson. That's what I want to get to, is the lesson that it's teaching. Watch this. So you find as you go down, and it lists all these people. What's 10 times 40? So how long was this study? 400 years. It was a 400-year study as it went through, and people lived an average lifespan of how many years? 912, just based on the data. They lived 912 years. You'll find that in Genesis chapter 5, 1 through 32. Then, after the flood, when God allowed man to eat meat, he did another study. How long was it? Exactly 10 generations. How many years was it? Another 400 years. So you have a 400-year study before the flood and a 400 years after the flood. And notice when meat was added to the diet, notice how the numbers dropped precipitously. Abraham lived 175 years, and the average lifespan went from 900 some years to 370 years, all because of something that was added to the diet that never was supposed to be there. Does that make sense to you? So friends, what I'm saying to you today is that as we consider how we are going to live and not die, how we're going to be healthy and not be sick, how we're going to deal with a potential next wave of a pandemic, where we see in that all the studies show that if you are eating the things that actually lead you to having comorbidities or underlying health issues, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, having these things, hypertension, foods cause those problems according to all the research. And a plant-based diet instead reverses them. So as we consider these things, please consider all the evidence. And the best evidence of all is that God loves you, and he gave you food to heal you, to help you, and to even show you how he saves you. Thank you. My sister, you had a question right here.
Yeah, I had a question about nightshade vegetables. Why is nightshade?
Question she's asking is, why are the nightshades so dangerous? You know, the best way to answer that question is, if you have arthritic conditions, nightshades, not your friend. And a lot of times you'll find that they can cause an inflammatory response in the body, and really that's what we're talking about. Inflammation. Avoid inflammation at all costs. So whether it's an autoimmune situation, it's an inflammatory situation. Whether it is arthritis, it's when the joints are inflamed. So, because of sometimes like your peppers, your eggplant, those things are nightshades, and they tend to have be a little more acid than alkaline, and that's going to cause inflammation. My thought on that always is, I hate telling anybody to avoid what God has provided in love. I always say, go and examine everything about your health, and you may find that the issue with an autoimmune situation might be a secondary issue and not the primary. You could have gut issues. For example, a lot of people get allergies because they eat. I didn't touch it that time. Okay. A lot of times people will get allergic reactions because they are eating things like, dairy. Dairy products are the biggest offender. But I was going to go to the fact when you eat foods that are GMO, stuff with from Monsanto. Hello, Monsanto. When you actually are doing things that have Roundup Ready and have these kind of pesticides, they were designed that when bugs would eat them, their stomachs would explode. That was how they're dealing with that issue, the pest problem. Well, they promised that it would not do anything to our stomachs. Well, that wasn't true. So a lot of people end up with perforation within the lining of their stomach, and then you end up with leaky gut syndrome. You got food leaking through your stomach, getting into your bloodstream, and now you have a lot of allergies and inflammation, because food should not be moving through and coursing through your veins, your blood vessels. That shouldn't happen. So you find a lot of that today. So I would say, before you write them off, go to a naturopath. Go to a doctor who's going to look at how your body is responding to food. Go to an allergist and see if you have any food-based allergic reactions. Check those things before you say, no, you can't. Because a lot of times it may be a secondary issue rather than a primary. Yes.
Wonderful information, Rico. Thank you so much. I have a question about that environmental working group that puts out those lists of the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. Have you heard about those?
Yeah, I have.
So they change a lot. Sometimes you have a list that they formulated, and then it changes. And I'm just wondering what that's.
Some of them are the question that she has is these environmental groups who are coming out with the dirty dozen, the clean 15, whatever the numbers are. They're doing it on basic, very simple parameters. Foods that happen to be extremely porous, your strawberries, your peaches, right? And if they are receiving a lot of pesticides, then they are more inclined to have them in them as food, right? So they say, here they are. And they happen to be like a banana's not going to be on there because it's not very porous, right? Mango's not going to be on there because it's not very porous. Apples are on there, and it's because is when they spray the apple right when it is flowering. That's when they spray it. And then at the base or the bottom, take an apple, you got the stem on the top, and then you've got that little thing at the bottom. Well, that's where it flowered. That's where the flower was. In fact, no fruit actually happens until it flowers. Flowers first, and then it actually grows into your fruit. But the apples, they spray when they flower, right? They have to. And so therefore, a lot of what they spray with it is inside the fruit. So it's also part of the dirty dozen. So why does it change? It's because, we're living in a world now where they have disrupted this ecosystem, and bugs and pests that didn't exist yesterday will exist tomorrow and next year. Why? Because our environment is changing. It's bad. It's so bad that we don't even have bees anymore. Did you know that? We don't have bees anymore. There's something called colony collapse syndrome. And what takes place is you have bees that are just dying off. They have to truck in bees and have them pollinate the almond trees. It's really a sad thing to see. And in China, worst of all, they have people hired to go through the groves and pollinate each flower by hand. So the insects that are good benefits have, that we need. I mean, not they may bug you when they're flying in your face, but they have a purpose. And we are putting things into the environment that's killing them off. And when they get killed off, then those things that didn't need to be sprayed yesterday now need to be sprayed. So it can change as we go. Next question, yes.
Is there any benefit to? So it sounds like a plant-based diet is the way to go, but I was just wondering.
You think?
Oh, yeah. But what do you have to say about organic chicken and organic meats?
Very good question. So if that wasn't heard, did it go through? Okay, good. Thank you, Dee. Very good question. She says about organic chicken and organic meats. My answer to that is, what is the difference between that and a left-handed chicken? It's just a chicken, right? No matter what it is, it's just chicken or it's just fish or it's just. The problem is, even though it's organic, naturally human beings are not designed to function from that amount of protein, first and foremost. As I mentioned, protein is not stored. It's like, and I use the analogy of building a house. Our bodies are built up from amino acids, which are proteins, and that's what makes us who we are. And once we become who we are, I gave the analogy, do you need to keep bringing in the semi-truck full of lumber to continue to build? You don't. Your body is built, you use a little bit every day, and that's it. It doesn't store it, it burns it as fuel. That is it. Protein only comes from a plant source, only. So you're getting it in a secondary way from the meat. So the problem with meat is the protein. Not only that, though, because if I can just use the origin scenario again, if you don't mind, in the very beginning, it wasn't on the menu. And let me tell you, that beef and that chicken was perfect. And even though it was perfect, someone wiser than us didn't put it on the menu. And the reason why, there's a verse of scripture that says this, and I think it answers it. And it says, the life of the flesh is in the blood. It's in the blood. So when God told Israel that they could eat it, he told them to eat it without the fat. Because why? The life of that animal is in that flesh. And because of how the composition of that blood, it doesn't correspond or it does not, that's what I'm looking for. It doesn't work with our blood, right? It causes all manner of problems. There's so many reasons why, but that's the main reason. So even if it's organic, even if it's free range, even if it's, the perfect environment, it will never, ever, 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 whether it's Italy or South America, New Zealand, wherever it is not compatible for human beings to eat. It's just a fact. Question back there and then up here.
Back to the fruits. Just one question. I read and heard something about grapefruits.
Yeah, grapefruits are tough.
Especially for us men, it could be detrimental in the acceleration of growth over time in our age for our prostate. Is there a fact in that?
I've not seen that research that it would cause your prostate to grow. No, you got to be careful about those kind of studies because they try to find ways to disparage fruits and vegetables, and it's something bad comes out about meat, then they find something to say about fruits and vegetables. For us men over 40, the world that we live in now, prostate starts to grow. Inflammation is the thing. There's a direct correlation. That was the word I was thinking about a few minutes ago. There's a direct correlation between prostate issues and inflammation, and that inflammation typically comes from, and especially, dairy products. Leading cancer for men is prostate, leading cancer for women is breast cancer, and both have a direct correlation with cheese. That's a fact. It's the hormones in them, yeah. And if I could just go back to your question, Dee, one more time. Think about this, if you will. So humans are different from all other species. We are the best, right? Fearfully and wonderfully made, yeah? Now let's take first a cow, this large 500-pound bovine animal, right? It has a calf. That calf comes out, and what does it do? First thing it does, tries to get its legs, right? You ever watch that? They try to get their legs under them. And then they find their way over to their mama, and they begin to nurse, right? And then suddenly something happens. Those legs are good, and they start running with the herd, right? They have to do that because that's something to keep them alive, you know? They're predators, so they have to be able to move, right? Doesn't make them less vulnerable, but it does help. Humans. We have a baby. Anybody here with babies? Anybody with children? Haven't ever had children? Anyone here ever was a baby? You guys look like I'm... They look at me like, what was a baby? What? Human babies, we come out, right? And we do the same thing. We nurse. And then 2-3 hours later, maybe a day, baby just gets off the bed and just starts walking around, right? No. It takes time. There's a developmental process where various facets of our being are developed as we go through these various stages, right? And so we don't grow as quickly as other animals. It's very different growth spurts and processes that are very different. Like I mentioned, mice and rats, they grow faster than any other species, right? Rat milk is very high in protein. But I told you it's hard to milk them, so don't. But the point is that after they are weaned, that meat that grew very quickly, exponentially in comparison to us, when you eat its meat, whether it's organic or not, what does it do? Causes you to grow fast, right? At the cellular level, you're eating things from that muscle tissue that has in it something that's going to accelerate growth in you. Problem is, you're an adult person, nothing's growing in you except maybe some DNA damage in your body, and then that starts to grow because now something needs to grow based on that accelerated protein source that's coming into the body. Get it? So doesn't matter if it's organic, whatever it is. And the fact is, we looked at the blue zones, those who are doing their thing on fresh foods are having the most chronic diseases. Those who actually are on a plant-based diet are not having those issues, so the science is clear.
Food is ready.
The food is ready. The food is ready.
Just a little announcement here. I talked to you last night about
you have to come behind this line.
Oh, okay.
That's the rule.
Okay, so I talked to you yesterday about a survey. I've prepared a survey, and we're going to be passing it out. I am going to ask for those who have served on the staff, meaning the blue shirts. If you're a blue shirt, raise your hand. Beverly, how come you, there you go, get that hand up. Okay, so I'm asking that you not fill the survey out. Yeah, because it's not for you. It's for the visitors here. We want to get feedback from them. So if you were a visitor and, we want to see how you enjoy the program so that we could learn from this and improve it, okay, and make it better. So that's the one thing right there. And then I think that is it.
You sure?
I think so.
All right. All right, well,
Let's
are
have a
you going to
blessing.
bless the food
I
today?
can, yes. Yes, sir, you have a question.
I had a question, and we had learned previously that the ruination of a salad is the vinegar or the vignette dressing. However, there is the apple cider vinegar, which is positively conducive to the circulatory and the blood. Can you comment, on the differentiation, in the use of
I like
apple
this guy. He's
cider
got great
vinegar?
questions. Great question. I'm going to answer him real quick because Jackie is standing there with food and she's ready to serve. And I bet you somebody's ready to receive, right? Okay, quick answer. He says that vinaigrette ruins a salad. I said that last night. It's not good. It's something that, you are eating a big salad and you're starved with a full stomach because it retards the digestion, right? Adds too much acid to the body and to the blood. Bad. Cancer loves an acid environment. So you are creating a condition for cancer. So what is it about that vinegar that makes it so acidic? It's fermentation. So apple cider vinegar is very good. There are health benefits to apple cider vinegar. It is still fermented nonetheless, right? Now, what people have found is that you can use apple cider vinegar for circulation and things like that. But you know what? You can do the same thing with cayenne pepper. There are lots of other things that you can use for good circulation. And good health depends on good circulation. In fact, perfect circulation. So you want to do things that help with your circulation. The problem is, though, is that apple cider vinegar is medicinal. What do I mean by that? I like to break things into two categories, that which is lifestyle and that which is medicinal. Understand the difference? Lifestyle, you do every day whenever. Drinking water, lifestyle. Drinking, juice smoothies or you juicing different fruits and vegetables or whatever. That's lifestyle. Medicinal is when you take a medicine, and when you take a medicine, you do that for how long? Until it does what it needs to do. And then you do what? You stop. Your apple cider vinegar is medicinal. You use it if you've got an issue, it will help you, but you do it and then you stop. Problem is that a lot of times people are doing something that's causing the problem, and then they take that to help the problem. And then they go back to the problem again, and then they keep needing to use it to help the problem. Why not go to a better, lifestyle, do the things that actually will reverse or reduce your issue, and then you don't need it. Make sense? You guys have been amazing. Give yourselves a thunderous applause. And I turn it over to Jackie.